All right, so today we're going to do two things. One, walk through Canvas, and two, talk about our capstones. So to start, let's talk about Canvas. So Canvas, I think almost all of you, at least all of you who are in the meeting right now, are on Canvas. I will double check. I can actually see in the background, so on the back end. So I will Slack you all if you need to do something to get properly onboarded into Canvas. But basically on our Slack channel, on the top, on our Slack channel topic, I've actually linked this page. And so how Canvas works is you have a homeroom, and then every different mod is a different course. So I've linked this homeroom. I think the homeroom is a good place to bookmark or just start because I have linked everything here. Some things to note that is different between Canvas and Learn. Some of the naming conventions have changed. So instead of the word mod that we are all used to, it's now called phase, and that's just because that's just what Canvas calls each different page, I guess. So I've linked to this page, so you should all see this. If anyone has any issues getting to this page, please let me know. To get to this page, you would have to first accept an email invite to Canvas. So on this page, all the same links that I've shared before are all here. All the same things that were on our Learn homepage are linked here. Our one-on-one links with me and Dara, repo, playlists, additional videos, and all our past project guidelines as well. There are a couple other things I'm going to share with you all slightly later, but these are here for you. So these are actually concept questions, are basically possible interview questions. Post-grad resources are basically resources that I've put together for you all to use post-graduation. So it's like additional coursework, books and videos that I think will be helpful depending on what you want to specialize in. And of course, our class calendar is here. So you can see that there are a bunch of events that are happening Flatiron-wide that are also on this calendar. And of course, our study group Zoom link is linked here. So on Canvas, two ways to navigate. I've linked everything here just for ease of use. I get to edit this page as much as possible. So if there are any big announcements or deadlines, I will put that on the homeroom. So this will change. Honestly, during the capstone phase, there aren't too many big announcements or deadlines. But if there's anything, I will put announcements here. And I will Slack the channel if there are any updates for you to look at. So here I've linked the capstone guidelines, which I'll be going through in a bit. But also with Learn, where you had all your labs and lessons, you're actually going to lose access to that on April 5th, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, April 5th, Monday, April 5th. And I will Slack you all to just remind you that that's going to be happening. Good news is I know most of you have been already cloning your labs, so that should be fine. But I know not all of you have been cloning like the readings, for example. So in good news, after you graduate, you will be receiving an email that will tell you how to download all the content, just so you have it on your computer. So after you graduate, I think it's 3 or 4 weeks after your graduation, your official graduation, you will also lose access to Canvas, but before that, you'll get the opportunity to download all the content. So a couple ways to navigate. Mine looks slightly different from yours because I have multiple cohorts, but if you click onto courses on the side, you'll have like a quick overview of all the different things that you have. So you can get to phase 1, which is mod 1, phase 2, 3, 4, 5, mod 2, 3, 4, 5. Click into those, you get to your content. Another way to do it that some people prefer is through the dashboard. All the same things will turn up. So for example, this is your mod 1 content, phase 1 content. So if you click into there, mine looks slightly different, but these are the same lessons that you had on Learn. And again, you probably won't want to have to go through all of them again now during the capstone phase, but you will be able to download them after you graduate. So that's how you get there. The same thing, you'll get to the same page if you click onto these URLs. So you can see here, you get to the phase of material by clicking onto the URLs. I've just hyperlinked those there. What's going to be relevant to us later, and I will go into more detail about this, is if you go into phase 5, this is where you're going to be submitting your capstone. And this part is going to be a little bit finicky. but I will, right before the capstone is due, I'll go over exactly how you're going to submit these. So in terms of submissions, you're going to have to submit your capstone in terms of your notebooks, as well as your GitHub URL, kind of similar to how you've been doing on Learn. This is actually a little easier, as well as links to all 7 of your blog posts, just so it's all in one place. If you already have blog posts done, you can actually go in and submit your blog post there. So I think if I go to student view, if you click submit assignment, you can actually paste the links to your blog post. Could be a way that you use to keep track of how many blog posts you have. Remember, you need 7 to graduate. Question?
Yeah, so we've been so we're doing 1 per mod, but now we should do an extra 3, I guess, at the end for the capstone.
It's always been 7, 1 per mod, and then 2 extra. So basically,
okay,
in total, you need 7. Yeah. Okay. So all of the past submissions that you've made on Learn, you should submit here as well. That makes sense. So you don't have to rewrite 7 new blog posts during the capstone phase. You just have to have all of your past blog submissions on this page as well. Cool, but that's pretty much it, honestly. If on Learn, starting April 5th, the only thing that you will have there will be your data science bootcamp prep. So just to let you all know, I will also Slack out a reminder when that is happening. You will lose access to basically your labs and readmes on Learn, unfortunately. And then in terms of the submission of your project, I'll go through details of that probably the week before it's due. All right, any questions about Canvas before we talk about our capstones? All right, so let's
actually quick question, Yish. I don't, anybody, well, anyway, I'll just ask quick. So right. What's the easiest way to, just to confirm, like, what's the easy way to navigate? Like, can I just go backspace, use the back arrow pretty easily to get from one place to the other in Canvas?
Yeah, yes, you can. You can. Gotcha. Actually, okay, cool. Something else that's pretty neat about Canvas, let's say in Mod 4, you didn't get to a specific topic, like for example, I don't know, you didn't look at neural networks too much. Okay, this is not a good example. Oh, so how you get there, this is actually pretty neat. You can actually, they actually have online Jupyter notebooks, so you don't have to clone everything. I actually still recommend the cloning just so that you have it and you know that you have it. But for like students that started after you guys, this is something that they have been doing. So they haven't had to clone their labs. The downside being that it's harder for them to download all of their saved work. But yes, as you can see here, it opens the brand new tab. And then it's an online Jupyter notebook. But yeah, in terms of navigating, the back button works fine.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Cool. I think someone else. Yeah.
So also in the Learn, we always say, mark is done, and here it is mark is done as well, but it reset all the ones that we had marked as done, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So I actually still have record of what you had done on Learn. But I think I've mentioned to you all as well that for the later mods, the completion rate actually doesn't matter. I know from a student experience perspective, it's good, it's better to see that it's marked as done, but unfortunately that cannot be brought over, and that's kind of out of my control.
I have a question about the blog posts that are on Learn.
Yes. Oh, yes. So those blogs will still be there. And they actually do have an associated URL. So you can submit, so you can actually submit that URL of your Learn blog post onto, oh, sorry, this is a different cohort. You can submit the URL for your blog post on here. That was on Learn. I will say it's probably better to not have your blogs on Learn. So what several people did, especially those who transferred cohorts and then ended up using Capstone like halfway through their time at Flatiron, they've actually taken their blogs, copied and pasted it onto like Medium or something, just because it becomes harder to access, unfortunately, after you graduate. So that's one downside. It works for now as you're still a student, but after you graduate, it becomes a little tricky to retrieve. Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Let's get into the capstone then. Any other questions regarding Canvas, or if you are finding that something is just not working the way that you think it should, Slack me and let me know. All right, so I slacked this into the channel at some point, but this is also linked on the homeroom page here. So feel free to click into this. If I'm going through any big topics, I also like to put like my notes of those topics in here. But for now, the main things to talk about with the capstone, I'm going to talk about what's expected for the capstones, what study groups are going to look like for the capstones, as well as point you to some resources for like coming up with your capstone idea. So first of all, coming up with project ideas, before I get into all those details, I want to point you all to a couple planners that have been used by past instructors and past students. I personally don't need to see a filled out planner from you. So an example is, I like this one because it has colors, but this is an example of one of the planners. It does help some people. I know I actually used one of these when I was a student. I didn't fill in every single thing because not everything was applicable, but just having some sort of plan and just having like your different components of your capstone written out somewhere does help. So there are 2 different planners that you can use to just track the different parts of your project. So there's a couple linked here. There is also a list of APIs that I've linked here as well.
Yes, quick question.
Yes.
For those planners, would you say that it's pretty, let's just say maybe standard, or it's beneficial to go through the planning process in terms of like being able to do that later? Like for a company or something?
It is not, because most of the time when you are working for a company, you likely are already part of some already moving process. That's just the experience that most students have had. I think unless you're a part of a startup that is just starting their data science team, maybe you want to utilize a planner like this. They might have already other like planning documents in place. But this is really, I would say this is fairly informal. This is really just to help you, I don't know, hash out your ideas, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so feel free to use them. Feel free to not. I don't need to see a planner from you. So that's not part of the deliverables. I think that's important for me to say. Something else that a lot of students have found helpful, these are just a bunch of capstones from my past students. So they're kind of organized into categories and groups. A lot of them have overlap, so feel free to explore. If you're interested in a specific kind of project or industry and you just are curious if there are past examples, let me know, because I do have, I think at this point, like 100+ former students that I can just, if a project rings a bell in my head, I'm happy to source it for you. So yeah, feel free to look through these examples just to see what some capstones look like. One big caveat here is a lot of people, as I'm sure you will as well, had continued working on their capstone projects after they graduated. So some of these projects look a lot more ambitious than an actual capstone needs to be. So do keep that in mind. Don't see that, oh my gosh, I have to build this like gigantic neural network project. No, that's not a necessity. So this is here as well. So let's talk about office hour schedules before I talk about more like specific capstone details. So in terms of office hours, we are still going to have our regular Monday, Thursday sessions. Oh, hold on, just saw a comment. Education, industry, or healthcare. I will send some examples to you, Kishore. Actually, I'll put them in the doc as well. All right. So in terms of our office hours, it'll still be the same study group schedule. A few of them I have things planned to talk about. A few of them will just be open Q&A that may or may not turn into bigger discussions. So for example, next week, I will be talking about, I'll be doing a review of APIs and web scraping on Monday, and then I will do a session on how you can build SQL databases on Thursday. And this SQL databases will be how do you actually make a SQL database, which I don't think we talked explicitly about in this course. So that's next week. I think probably useful for a lot of you. And you can see that there are a couple other weeks that have topics that I've planned out already. For example, Jupyter Dash is a dashboarding tool that I will walk through as well. I'll do topic deep dives on clustering and NLP. You can see this is week 6, so probably be based off of what your projects are like. I'm definitely open to changing some of these topics based on what most of your capstones are looking like. But this is what my last cohort ended up doing a lot of. So there are a lot of clustering projects, a lot of NLP projects. So this is what was most important for them. But again, depending on your capstones, these are very subject to change. Cool. You also see here that there is something called MVP presentations, something not to worry about now, but in 3 weeks, on week 5, we'll be doing a day of MVP presentations. And MVP basically stands for minimum viable product. And what a minimum viable product is, for this scenario, in this context, I would think of a minimum viable product as, if I only had like 1 week to work on my capstone and I need to get something working, what would that something be? So an MVP presentation will just be a presentation on where you're at, or what product you have at the halfway point. So I'll talk about that more leading up to that. So just know that that's coming up. There's going to be a presentation day midway through and then one at the very end.
Quick question about that year. So I look forward to the presentation, but would you say for MVP, will we need to define for ourselves what is workable?
No.
Gotcha.
I think it is very, very flexible. I think even with all my past students, you don't even have to create a presentation, a slide deck for it. Some students have found that that's more helpful for helping them frame and explain where they're at right now or at that point. But it can be really just like walking through thoughts in your head, or also just walking through parts of your notebook. That is definitely okay for that presentation. You don't have to worry about putting together like a formal like slide deck or anything. But yeah, I will go into more detail in a few weeks when that happens.
And also, are you going to have sort of like benchmarks of where we should be to make sure we're on track?
Yes.
Because I know we have to have, yeah.
Absolutely. So those will be what we will discuss during one-on-ones, because everybody's project looks a little bit different. It's hard for me to say, all right, by week 4, everyone needs to be running their baseline models. So because every project is very different, this will be something that we will talk about during our one-on-ones. And we'll be setting intermediate goals or like weekly goals for you to work on. That's a good question. Yeah, anything else before we talk about project specifics? Awesome. So I think the biggest question we have here is, what constitutes a capstone project? It is kind of flexible, and honestly, I'm the one that defines what how much of a project is enough to constitute a capstone. But a few main points. 1, it has to include some sort of machine learning, of course. 2, you have to get your own data. So you cannot go to Kaggle, grab a data set, run some models on that. That is not a capstone, which is why I'm doing the API and web scraping session on Monday. You have to get your own data. And the main point is, and the main motivation for getting you all to do that is to have yourselves unique data sets. If you get something off of Kaggle, it's very, very likely that someone has already done a data science project on that data set. Honestly, hundreds of people probably have done it on Kaggle data sets. So for that purpose, you have to synthesize your own data set. What that can look like does differ person to person, project to project. You can actually start off with a Kaggle data set and then maybe API or web scrape a couple extra columns to add to your data set. That's something that you can do. Or let's say you are doing a very, very complicated image classification project where you're trying out a lot of new architectures. With image classification, it is a lot harder to source your own data. And depending on the level of, I guess, advanced how advanced your neural network is, you may not have to find your own data. So it is a little bit flexible, but if you feel like you're in kind of a gray area, talk to me about it and I can confirm that. So machine learning, you have to get your own data. Other than that, it is pretty much, it can be very, very similar to a phase project or a mod project. I think if you saw the presentations from my other cohort, a lot of the projects were straight up classification projects that included a little bit of extra analysis. Like I feel like, especially with these past mod 4 projects with a lot of you, all of your projects are great because they were 2 to 3 week long projects, but there are a lot of opportunities to get deeper into analysis or get deeper into evaluation. And so that's where you should be growing from. So yeah, with those main points, does anyone have anything to clarify at this moment? Cool. So I find that the hardest part for me during the capstone phase was coming up with a project. So some questions to help aid in coming up with a project idea I have here. Are there specific models you would like to use in your project? I think with this question, you can really think about what did I do for mod 4? What did I do for mod 3? Do I want to do something similar because I know I want to work with these kinds of models in the future? Or do I want to do something different to contrast my past projects so that my resume will have a variety? So for example, in my experience, I think my mod 3 and mod 4 projects were like classification with NLP followed by like image classification. That made sense to me to do a recommendation system for my capstone just to contrast. Are you interested in specific industries? If you have like an idea of an industry that you want to get into, I think it's a really good idea to do a little bit of research to see what kind of techniques they are using in data science and machine learning in those industries, and then you can cater your project to that. I don't have too much knowledge on every industry, so feel free to ask me about it, but I think doing your own research would also be very, very beneficial. Are there interesting data sets? I think this one is less common. I don't think that many people have like, oh, I know I want to work with this data. But that could be a starting point as well. And sources that are good to look up projects. Towards Data Science has a lot of good project ideas, as well as GitHub. GitHub search works very, very slowly, but you can actually do GitHub searches to search up projects that are using specific models or specific, I don't know, data sets if you're interested in like doing, let's say actually how I came up with my capstone project is I actually did a search on GitHub for recommendation systems SVD, and then I found a bunch of data sets and I went to source that data on my own. So yeah, those are my suggestions for places to start. Next, I want to talk about pitching the project. So you do have to pitch your project to me by next Friday, the 19th. So I think I have this here. Pitch your project by the 19th. It doesn't have to be a formal pitch. You don't even have to do it over a one-on-one. Honestly, you can just Slack me your idea. But at this pitch, details that you got to sort out. What is your data? Can you even obtain your data? Because sometimes you have a great project idea, but then you find out that like maybe there's a paywall to the API that I'm not asking you to pay for your data. You definitely don't have to do that. What models are you intending to use? This is also like what kind of project you want to do. Is it recommendation system, time series, is it a neural network, classification? It can even be regression. I feel like mod 2 is often overlooked during the capstone phase, but regressions are very, very valid capstone projects as well. What is your business case? In a lot of your project feedback that I've been doing in the past week, coming up with a business case that goes beyond building a predictive model, right? If your business case is, I'm going to build this predictive model to be able to forecast housing prices or detect sentiment, I think that you should go one step further for your capstone. Come up with some sort of specific business case that your model will be useful for, just because having that will allow you to demonstrate your ability to extrapolate non-technical insights from your technical project. this last point is a little bit less important, what your MVP is going to be versus your ideal final product. I think this can also kind of be a spectrum. A lot of projects end up being kind of like modular or have like different stages in their evolution. So whether you start at like a simple classification and then you add like maybe some clustering, maybe you add some, I don't know, topic modeling, maybe you add more advanced models later on. If you have those ideas, I would like to know as well. I see a question on the size of your data set. That's a good question. The size of your data set, I think it really depends because you've got to balance out being able to do the project that you want to do versus like, is it even worth doing a project on this much data? As a benchmark, I think at least 1,000 columns, sorry, not 1,000 columns, 1,000 rows per class for a classification project is good. For other projects, honestly, feel free to send me your data set and I can be the judge of that, honestly. But as a classification, as a benchmark, having 1,000 rows per class is a good place to start. Cool. With that, any questions at this moment? All right. Oh, I just saw something come in. Ah, there we go. All right, so I know that some of you during these Mob4 reviews, we've been talking briefly about possible capstone ideas that you might have. So I'm more than happy to chat with you on Slack or during one-on-ones or project reviews about what your capstone could look like. I really recommend looking at the capstone presentation from my last cohort that I linked in the Slack channel last week and the week before, as well as these past projects. I think this is a really good place to start. But yeah, just make sure, I think if you can have your capstone be a mod project and a little bit more, and you're getting your own data, that is kind of like the baseline for a capstone project. And then what you add on to that is an add-on. All right, well, things to look forward to. Next week, we have 2 study groups on additional materials. So again, I'll be recapping getting your own data, as well as building SQL databases. I will be putting both of these notebooks onto your GitHub repo. Actually, I'll do that tomorrow. I will also be talking about creating front ends, just creating a web application, just so you can, showcase your project, host it on a website somewhere. So I'll be doing that as well. And again, based on your projects, if a lot of you are doing something similar, I'm happy to do deep dives in whatever that specific thing is. But yeah, that's kind of all I had to share. I do think it is important that you really take time to think about your project idea. You're going to be spending 2 months with this project. So really take the time to think about it. Make sure that you know that it's something that you're going to be okay with working with for the next 2 months. And yeah, happy to talk through any details that that you want to talk through. Any questions at this point? I think that's all I have to share for today. Cool. Well, in this past half hour, it's gotten really dark in this room. But yeah, if any of you have any questions, feel free to Slack me. If you have like a starting point of an idea, Slack me as well, and I can see if it makes sense or not. Or if you want project inspirations or similar projects to like a specific topic or industry, please let me know. All right, well, let me know if anyone has any issues with Canvas, and I will talk to you guys on Monday then. All right, well, have a good rest of your evening, everybody. And I will see you all back here on Monday. Bye.
Bye.